This person is asking, was the human DNA mixed with ET DNA in the far past more than once? So we know it was created to create us, mixed to create us, but were there any other attempts of mixing the DNA?
Yes. The creation of the hybrid children involved great mixing of genetic material by the Greys. It is an experiment that lasts a long time. It is utilizing many different genetic strains for optimization of the hybrid children, and therefore those that are part of the hybridization program have been, in a sense, genetically mixed ever since the hybridization agenda began in your timeline.
Was that about 6,000 years ago?
Approximately, though that is a very generalized timeline.
But talking about timelines, if our world is splitting into two, and the people in the quote-unquote other world will eventually disappear from our reality, does that mean the world's population will be cut in half? Will there be a mass die-off or exodus event?
Not necessarily, though some of that may occur. But the idea is that the worlds that you will shift to will have their own populations as well, representative of souls that have chosen to be a part of that reality. Now, it may not be the same level of population that you experience right now, but it doesn't mean that the population will be cut in half, because there are many different souls that will choose to have an incarnation in those versions of Earth that you will be shifting to, some of which may not be incarnated now.
And will the babies being born now and the children, will they be progressing to the positive Earth, or do we not know?
Most of them will be, because that is one of the reasons why many of them are choosing to be born at this time. And again, remembering that they are a new species that will not forget so much who they are. The vast majority of them will be part of the idea of open contact. There may be exceptions to this depending upon the life path that certain souls have chosen, and some of them may choose to go in directions where contact doesn't occur. But the vast majority of those being born today on your timeline have chosen this timeline specifically because of the experience of open contact that they will be of assistance in bringing about.
Is having contact with a deceased person the same as having contact with an AT? You once mentioned that on your planet you are in connection with the deceased ones from your civilization. How is this contact possible? Why can't we see with our eyes our deceased ones and ETs? Are there some techniques you can share?
As we have often said, following the formula, especially acting on your passion, will raise your vibration. Raising your vibration will make you a better receiver, a better antenna to receive higher frequency perception, which means your senses will become sharper to higher frequencies, which will ultimately allow you to actually physically perceive spirits and other things that are beyond the range of your senses today. So yes, this will be a natural evolution for humanity to be able to perceive these things in the same way that our civilization does at this point. There is a degree of difference between perceiving a spirit and perceiving an extraterrestrial, even though they may share similar frequencies. But what makes them an extraterrestrial as opposed to what makes them a spirit is, in and of itself, a degree of difference in terms of the expression of that vibration, the expression of that entity. But it's really kind of similar to the idea of saying red light and blue light are both electromagnetic energy, but there is a difference in how you perceive them because of their frequency. So even though there is a degree to which they are very similar, a plane on which they are almost identical as the same kind of energy, the difference in their frequency makes the experience of them feel different to you. And that's the difference between higher frequency ETs and spirit beings, even though they do share a common fundamental frequency that allows them to exhibit traits that are similar in both cases.
This is a question about the actor and comedian Robin Williams. He was diagnosed with a rare brain disease called Lewy body dementia. Did his constant use of his brain and multi-access energetically wear out his brain? Or was he predisposed to this rare condition genetically?
It did not wear out his brain. This is part of the choice his spirit made for his soul's life path, to experience this in this way. We are not allowed to go into detail because of the survivors of the family of that particular individual. But this is part of his soul's life path that he chose before he was born, and it is something that aids and assists the different family members that remain to investigate and explore for their own soul's life paths as well.
There is an infinite number of parallel realities. Does this mean you are speaking to humankind? Does this mean that you are speaking to humankind in many parallel realities too? And that some of those realities are closer to open contact or are already there?
Yes. Other versions of me, I suppose you could say, are speaking to other civilizations, other versions of you in many other parallel realities simultaneously. I am generally aware of this, even though I don't have to be specifically aware of what's going on in each of those parallel realities, unless for some reason it is important for my life path to specifically know what those communications are all about. I do draw from them in general to aid and assist in each timeline that experiences open contact, to give a vibration off that is more conducive to each reality being more capable of choosing the direction of open contact vibrationally speaking. So I use the connections in all those parallel realities to increase the probability and likelihood for other parallel realities who have chosen a higher probability of open contact to move it in its momentum in that direction.
What percentage of those realities have done open contact?
It is not exactly accurate to give you a percentage of something that is infinite.
Okay.
The idea of the experiences of open contact in different realities take many different forms and are not limited to the idea just of what you understand your Earth to be. There are many other versions of Earth as well that are totally dissimilar from what you understand your experience of Earth to be. So if I limit the answer to those versions of Earth that you would recognize as versions of Earth, then I could say that about 25 to 30% of those versions, those limited versions of Earth that you would recognize as versions of Earth, are experiencing open contact with respect to our involvement as opposed to other extraterrestrial or extradimensional involvement. So there are limitations within limitations that are specific, and compartmentalizations within compartmentalizations that are specific to certain kinds of open contact that are experienced by certain versions of Earth that you would recognize as being somewhat familiar, whereas there are many thousands of other versions that you wouldn't recognize as familiar at all.
Well, that sounds very promising and exciting.
All right.
You told a person that was connecting with a ship at night that those are not the ones you want to draw to you, that it is not safe. You also stated that we are in a bubble of protection on Earth at this time, and we can't be affected by negative beings. Does this mean we are protected, but can choose to draw negative entities to us if we really want to?
Yes, you can do that. But what we meant by telling that person what we told them is that the energy was simply not right for them at this moment. They wouldn't have been able to handle it. It was not meant that they were attracting a negative being. It simply meant that they were not ready to handle the frequency, and it would have caused them to go into fear survival mode to have those interactions. We were not implying that those were negative beings.
How do the souls in this physical earth reality who have attained the highest level of soul alignment, often referred to as masters, differ, if at all, from you and your people with regards to spiritual and soul alignment?
Well, again, as we gave the explanation before, they really only differ in the specific way in which they present themselves that is relevant for Earth's societies, as opposed to the way we present ourselves for our own societies. So there is a fundamental vibration that is similar, but the idea of the way it's expressed, of course, will be relevant for the societies with whom they interact more directly.
Do we experience ourselves as having a personality and things like thoughts and feelings, etc., on a soul and oversoul level? If so, how does that work? And generally, how is the experience of being on the soul or oversoul level different from our experience of having a human personality and being in physical reality?
You will not exactly have the personality, or let us put it this way, what you experience as the human personality will not be dominant on the soul level. It will be a part of you in much the same way, and we have used this analogy before, that your childhood personality is not dominant in you as an adult, but it's still a part of you. So you will recognize it as part of you as a soul, and the oversoul will recognize the individual soul as part of it, again, in much the same kind of an analogy, but it will not be the dominant part of it. It will not be a personality dominance as such. The difference will be more of a knowingness rather than a belief system that generates the personality. So you will simply know who you are, you will know what you need to know, and you will know what the connections you are creating will be all about. You will experience them in a very different way. It'll be more an experience, direct knowingness, rather than the removal that you experience through the idea of a personality that seems more separated from source than the soul or the oversoul would experience. It is a more multidimensional experience, a more multi-connected experience. You see yourself from a multitude of different perspectives simultaneously than you experience as a physical being.
And on that note, is the life review experienced from the perspective of the personality self, the soul, or the oversoul?
It is experienced from both, in the sense that the soul experiences it more objectively, but experiences the idea of what the personality experienced or would experience if it still existed, because that gives context to the idea of what the personality's effect was on other personalities during the physical life experience. But the soul experiences all of that more objectively as a lesson plan, rather than experiencing it directly in the way the personality of a physical being would.
When a person is channeling a spirit or ET, is there always a version of the channeler's higher self coming through?
The higher self is always involved, in a sense, as a facilitator for the connections that a being may make to other beings. Yes, the higher mind is always the go-between, because that's your soul. And your soul, in its life path choices, has to be engaged and involved in any of those choices to connect to other beings. So the higher mind, which is synonymous with your soul, is always involved in the process.
This person says, I recently received your gifts, the contact crystal and crystal skull, and carry them with me all the time. Last week, I dreamt of a large black pyramid with sharp edges illuminated by white light floating in the sky. Could you please help me understand its meaning?
This is a higher dimensional version of what we have referred to as our phone number. The black equilateral triangle backlit against a black background by deep blue light. What you have done is dimensionalized it on a higher level. You now see it as an actual pyramid or tetrahedron that is backed by the white light of source, which is representative of our collective consciousness on a higher level. So you were tapping into our frequency on a higher level in a more multidimensional way.
Is there any point to praying, or is it a waste of time?
Nothing is a waste of time. It depends on how you approach it. And remember that praying is simply a present state of appreciation and gratitude for who you are and what you experience in the here and now. It's not about asking for things you don't have. That's not what praying is. It's about aligning with Source in a way that allows you to experience unconditional love, appreciation, and deep gratitude for who you are, how your life is unfolding at present, and the lessons that you are learning for your soul's growth. It is an experience of connection to Source and the infinite. It is not about the idea of asking for things. That's not what praying is. So yes, it's not a waste of time. It is what connects you to Source more closely.
How is that different from meditation?
It doesn't have to necessarily be different, although again, it's a matter of technique and how you use meditation and what you choose it to experience with it.
Are there any teachings or permission slips on this planet that are completely clear and entirely truthful? Or are there always distortions that require sorting through and discernment? Is there anything we can truly, fully trust and we can truly know that is the truth while we are here? Or will it always be a hall of mirrors with different truths and perspectives?
The one truth you can always clearly trust is that all truths are true for different people. And that's why we give you the idea of permission slips, because each permission slip will work differently for different people if it allows them to reflect within themselves the ability to get in touch with their belief systems and let go and clarify themselves of those beliefs that aren't aligned with their core vibration. Then they will work for those people and give them the clear understanding and the clear truth about who and what they are as a reflection of Source, of existence, of the infinite. So all permission slips can be used to that end. They can be used positively or negatively. But the idea is you each are a clear truth, a clear reflection of all that is, but you are creating a situation and a circumstance where you use permission slips to discover that clarity, that truth of who you are within yourself. So you are going through a process of clarification.
Could you share how to feel empathy without feeling sad or sorry for another being? I don't want to victimize, but my heart still feels bad for those beings that are neglected and abused.
You don't have to judge the experience. Remove judgment from the equation, and empathy will not allow you to feel sad, but allow you to experience compassion in the same way that you would look at a child who simply hasn't reached a point of understanding of how something works. And you can have compassion, but you don't have to be sad because you understand they are on a learning path. They're on a learning journey. They will grow. If you feel the sadness, then you are evolving into judgment in that sense and actually no longer feeling empathy, but sympathy. You are aligning with their lower vibration, which doesn't serve you to serve them. Empathy is a vibration that allows you to identify and have compassion and understanding for what they're going through, but is a vibration that can also be sent to them to help them uplift themselves and learn what it is they need to learn that will serve them best. So stay in service as you pick up upon the vibrations and the lessons they are going through, but do not devolve down into sympathy to match their frequency, because then you are not helping them uplift themselves. So don't bring judgment into what they are experiencing, and you will not experience sadness. You will experience true empathy that gives them the opportunity to uplift themselves, and you will have compassion for them in the same way you would have with a child that is learning a lesson that's important for their life path.
So empathy uplifts them.
Yes.
And sympathy brings you down to that lower level.
Yes.
In the last transmission, you talked to somebody about highly sensitive people and how they're often as a result of trauma. If your definition of that kind of sensitivity, is your definition of that kind of sensitivity different from other kinds of sensitivity? It seems like, yes, there are trauma-based sensitivity, but also maybe other forms of energy awareness and kinds of sensitivity. Can you talk about different kinds of sensitivity? If there are different kinds and what makes a person more or less, quote unquote, sensitive? Also, what are some of the roles for sensitive people in the world and the reasons that one might choose?
I'm going to stop you right there. This is an extremely large subject we do not have time to address fully. There are different kinds of sensitivity, and there are different ways in which people have chosen to achieve the sensitivity that they experience in physical reality. Not all of them are the product of trauma, although some souls may have chosen that to ensure that they will have a certain kind of level of sensitivity to things, but they don't have to carry the idea of the trauma forward once they achieve the sensitivity. And there are those that have chosen other paths where they simply have natural sensitivity to things in a certain way. We cannot go deeply into this subject at this time. There isn't time to address all the different aspects and levels of this topic.
Is there ever a reason to overwhelm or push ourselves into something to grow or rush our progress? Or is it always possible to heal and expand in a way that feels healthy, gentle, and sustainable?
Always. There is always a way to do that. If you feel overwhelmed, then that should be a signal that you may not be going about it in the way that is most aligned with your path in the terms of passion and being of service. So overwhelm is your gauge to know when you need to look for another way that is more you to do the thing that you are passionate about doing, instead of doing it in a way that doesn't work for you. That's not necessarily your way of doing things that aligns with your core vibration. That's what overwhelm tells you. You need to go about it in a more efficient way that's more you.
Is it possible to take a wrong turn or make a wrong choice in life that affects your destiny? Or since we create our own reality, is that not really possible?
It's not really possible, because sometimes learning those lessons by doing what appears to be a mistaken path is actually part of the lesson you need to learn. So it's about course correcting as you go and using those apparently wrong choices as course correcting mechanisms to guide you in a way that will actually allow you to fulfill the path you chose for this life. So in that context, there really aren't any wrong paths, aren't any real mistakes if you use them that way, instead of becoming lost in the idea that you did something wrong, which then involves self-judgment, which again, paradoxically, can still be used as a lesson to be learned on your life path. So that involves your free will about how to respond to the choices that you make, not judge yourself for them, but learn from them in a positive way that will act as a guiding mechanism to allow you to accelerate the idea of how you experience your life path in a positive way, as opposed to decelerate you in learning your lessons on the life path in a negative way. Both can be instructive, but one can allow yourself to feel more effortless and joyful, and one can feel like more of a struggle. It's up to you to determine the way in which you go through life, the speed at which you go through life, how you experience those things with your free will and your response to what happens and the choices that you make.
Can you offer insight on why some people use helping others to avoid addressing their own needs or still feel unworthy after providing service?
Well, again, if you are not taking care of yourself, then you can't really be of help to any others in the overall sense. Yes, you may be able to perform some particular duty that does assist someone, but if you're doing that from a position and from a vibration where you don't feel worthy of doing that for yourself, then you're not really giving the others the full measure of the frequency and the vibration of assistance that you could be giving them in your service to them. So the idea of depriving yourself of that willingness, of that service, of that beingness, of that value, of that validity, actually shortchanges the service you're doing for others, because you're not giving them your full measure of being, because you're not taking care and honoring yourself or validating yourself as well. So you're not fully participating in the service that you're doing for others.
Could you explain how to move into a state of knowing immediately, to experience all the knowledge of a particular perspective now? So this person is asking this because she's taking a test to become a counselor, and she has trouble. She's had trouble in the past, and she doesn't want to repeat the test.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there. The process is the point. Learn to love the process. If you're going through a process, if you're struggling with taking the test, even though the test represents something that you're passionate about, there's a reason for that. And knowing everything immediately is not why you chose to be physical. You chose to be physical to learn who you are by going through a process and discovering something new about yourself that will enrich your level of appreciation of having achieved what you're passionate about. Do not avoid the process. Learn to find your path through it that is representative of your joy. And do not allow yourself to denigrate or invalidate the process you have chosen to experience. Otherwise, you're not getting the value out of it that you engineered the process to give you. So don't be in a hurry. Just go through it. Do what you can to go through it in a way that allows you to enjoy it, to allow it to become part of your passion in going through it. And do not invalidate it. There's a reason why you're going through that process. Find out what it is. You will gain an appreciation of what you achieve as a result.
Thank you, Bashar. We've run up on time. Is there anything else that is important that you want to share with us?
Allow yourselves to know that you have accelerated greatly in the past few months and brought in more rapidly what you would term a future that is more resonant, more vibrationally aligned, and more highly probable in the direction of open contact. It is not so very far away in terms of time that it will begin. A couple of years. It is imminent in its beginning. Open up, participate, act, join, communicate, receive. We thank you, and now allow yourselves to go forward in this transmission by energizing yourselves to create gatherings, to reach out, to commune, and to invite contact into your reality in a more accelerated way, in a bigger scale, bigger scope. Have fun. Use your imaginations. Be creative. That is what will accelerate you most of all.
Thank you, Bashar.
You are welcome. And now you may continue in your imagination.